Hey guys, this is John Cheehawk back again with yet another video for you to watch, laugh at, comment at, like, hate, I don't know. I'm making up top five lists, favorite lists, things like that. And so I'm going to go over my top five favorite obscure comic book characters. But what I wanted to run by you really, really quick was I just watched Punisher Warzone, the 2008 Ray Stevenson vehicle. Again, for like, I don't know, I've seen this movie like 30 times now. Um, I wanted to point out an interesting couple of statistics to you. In the opening sequence, when Punisher like goes gung ho on the mob, he kills before he pulls a firearm. He kills seven people using knives, chairs, his own hands, feet, whatever. Like he kills seven people straight up. Total in that sequence, he kills 10 without using a firearm. During that sequence, and this was hard to keep track of because people were going down left and right, I counted 21 people he gunned down using various firearms during that sequence. Just an interesting statistic. If you want to watch that sequence over and see if my numbers are accurate or even close, but I know the non-gun deaths are definitely right up there. So on to my top five favorite obscure characters, and I wrote this down in the wrong order because I've changed my mind on it. Number one, I'm going to do it one to five. Um, Number one would have to be Howard the Duck. Yeah, he's not as obscure now because of the two scenes that you got um, in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. I mean, they were both very, very small scenes, so you can't really say that he's on the cusp. Marvel has not launched a new Howard the Duck book with the the new legacy system that they're doing right now. I think now would be a perfect time for them to try to do it. However, Howard was one of those characters that was more adult than kid friendly, just because he wasn't a superhero. He didn't wear tights or a cape or anything like that. In 1976, there was an actual storyline that coincided with an actual, honest to goodness, write in campaign for Howard the Duck as president in the 76 election. Howard the Duck is not, one, he's a fictional character. Two, even if he was a living, breathing entity, he's not from the United States, let alone planet Earth. So, unless you've already changed the Constitution, he's never going to be president. But a great character. I love Howard the Duck, based on Steve Gerber writing the character and Gene Colan drawing the character. Just phenomenal top rate stuff. If you can pick up back issues, even if they're low grade, I recommend doing so, or getting the essential Howard the Duck, or they just did it's the first collected edition, and it's all in color compendium as well. Number two, and Howard and this guy go hand in hand. Man Thing. Um, Howard first appeared in a Man Thing comic book that was Adventure into Fear, number 19. It's actually just Fear. That was the name of the book, but the whole title was Adventure into Fear. But it's more commonly known by that name, even though the book title itself is just Fear. Um, Man Thing was a different take on the Swamp Thing genre. They both came out at the same time, created by a couple of different friends who pitched them, one to Marvel, one to DC. They both got picked up, so they both had to kind of alter them and change them. I like Man Thing because he is more of an elemental in my eyes. He's also an empath. Like, he doesn't talk. There's no real thought process that goes on. He just moves and reacts to things. And he's much more of a horror movie character than the more philosophical Swamp Thing. Don't get me wrong, Swamp Thing's a cool character too, but Man Thing just holds a little more near and dear to my heart. Number three is kind of a twofer, Booster Gold and Skeets. I do have a Skeets tattoo that you can see right there. Um, Booster Gold and Skeets are a lot of fun because not a lot has been done with them. Booster Gold has had, I believe, two series so far. He's a guy who came from the future. He's kind of a disgraced former collegiate football player. I don't believe it was football that they were playing, but he was headed for the pros. He was going to make, millions of dollars. He was going to be, one of the biggest stars ever of whatever sport it was. I can't really remember. But he got caught gambling on the games that he was playing in, and so he was kicked out. He was banned. And the next thing you know, he's walking the halls of, the Natural History Museum as a security guard, overnights, with Skeets, the robot, just like floating around with him. Skeets had all the information, was a security robot. He reprogrammed Skeets to like just give him all the information on history, steals a Legion of Superheroes Legion flight ring, travels to the 20th century so that he can become rich and famous. Like he had no ideals on being an actual hero, because he just wanted to be rich and famous. Like that was his whole thing, which I think really ties into social media nowadays and stuff. I think you could really bring Booster Gold into the forefront if you kind of redid his origin and just made him this just like attention seeking person, because that's basically what social media is all about. Can be used for positive things, but I think the majority of people who use it, use it just to, glom attention onto themselves. And that's kind of what Booster Gold did. He has been roped into being a hero now and again, but he tried to stop the Reagan assassination attempt in the early 80s, which is interesting because it was foiled. So it's like, okay, so you know about the assassination attempt and you know it was foiled, but you're going to jump in and be the guy who foils the assassination attempt. So, people are like, you're a hero. But, like, I don't think you get money from that. You might go on, like, if you write a book about it, you might go on a book tour or something, but that ain't going to work. Coinciding with Booster Gold and Skeets at number 3 is number 4. It's Jaime Reyes's Blue Beetle. Now, a lot of people might say sacrilege because it's not the original Blue Beetle, but I got a soft spot for Jaime Reyes. I mean, first of all, he's a Latino superhero, and he's just a kid at that. Me being having Mexican descent in me, finding some diversity in comics that you can relate to is always an appealing process. But just finding this character, like, not only is it the diversity aspect, he's just a kid who happens to get this freaking alien technology lodged onto his back that gives him these powers and these abilities that take him from already being like an awkward teenager who only has a really small circle of friends into having to like take on the responsibility of like, what do I do now? We got to help save the world or save the city or do whatever. And I think those are a lot of things that kids go through nowadays, and I mean adults go through in, just going to their jobs and seeking out, trying to better themselves with, extracurricular activities and things like that. But Jaime Reyes gets my nod at number 4. Number 5 is Omega Red, Arkady Rossovich, former Soviet super soldier. Arkady Rossovich was one of, I believe, 2 Reds that survived the super soldier serum process, the other being Epsilon Red, who died shortly after the process was completed. So Arkady Rossovich was really the only surviving super soldier from the Soviet Union. This was in response, of course, to Captain America being the United States' super soldier. What stands out for me is one that you could really repackage Arkady Rossovich as this kind of man out of time, like maybe he was frozen at the end of the Cold War through some accident or battle, and he's brought back out now, like still thinking about the Cold War and like, are we still at war with the United States? And then you could bring in the regular geopolitics that are going on now and make it a real force in comics and make it mean something again. But the thing that really stood out to me about Omega Red, and I don't know about you guys, but in the 90s, I also collected trading cards, sports trading cards, and then later comic book trading cards. Now, I think it was Fleer or Skybox that was doing the Marvel cards, and they used to, have the little stats on it, and then you would look on the wrapper and it would tell you, like, this is their energy projection, their strength, their durability, things like that. But they'd write a little bio on there. And for Omega Reds, they talked about how he survived the super soldier program and how he got through it. The quote that I still remember to this day, and it still applies to this day, is he toughed it out on pure mean. Now, when you're 14, 15, 16 years old, you're angry, you're trying to get through high school, you're being bullied, you're just trying to be yourself, you're, trying to fit in some fashion, playing sports, doing whatever, joining clubs, doing stuff that's not good for you. Like, you have that anger level. So, like, knowing that this character made it through a process that's much harsher than what you're going through, probably will ever go through on a physical standpoint, that he toughed it out on pure mean. Like, you can use that anger and channel it as a way to get through things. And so I really identified with that. And I remember it to this day, some 20, 25 years later. And it still applies to this day. It's part how I motored through the last couple weeks of college to get my portfolio done and have it presented. And even though I graduated by the skin of my teeth, I still graduated and got it done because I used that anger and pushed through. Getting through so many different processes in my life. But all of these characters are different things that I can identify with and I love. And put your favorites in the comments. Check me out on Patreon, patreon.com/antihero brand, all one word. And just remember, my name is John Chihak with Antihero Brand Press. See you again.